Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for December 8th, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating. And also present are some of our regulars, Ralph Kohler, Simo Helston, and Thomas Howell. So we thought we'd start off with this issue, which was brought up in Slack a couple of days ago. The issue number is 3399161. Add cancel button to media library widget pop-up. So Ralph, do you want to describe the problem, or shall I just read the description?
However you like. It's nothing special. It's just basically about the person who created the issue in regards of consistency suggested to add a cancel button to the dialog modal for media items. Because at the moment you just have the close button, the X in the upper right corner to close a modal, but the person suggested to add a cancel button. As Stephen Musgrave already commented on Slack, the subsystem maintainer commented already on the issue in comment number 5.
Okay, just let's see if we can follow this. Is it important to have a media field on taxonomy?
From my point of view, not necessarily.
Okay, well, I see Aaron has just joined us, so for his sake, I'll paste the link again in Zoom chat to this sample site. As usual, admin are the credentials to log in. And let's see. Let me go for English, an English article. So let's remove the existing media image and try to add a new one. And is this the modal window we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So there's an X button in the upper right corner of the modal you can use to close. If I click outside, clicking outside does not make it go away. I'll try the escape button. That works. But the proposal is, in addition to the submit button for the form, insert selected, to add a cancel button. And let's see if we can look at the screenshot. Open image in new tab. First option, yay. So this is, I guess, the before picture. We don't have a screenshot of after. I guess we have this one. Is there a better one? Better screenshot
I don't
later
think
on?
so. I don't. Oh, maybe in number 6 there is one.
So that looks like existing.
That's the comparison one. I forgot. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So this is, I guess, the 7th theme. And in addition to insert selected, which is the existing submit button, there's a cancel button. Okay, so this is the modal we're talking about. And we would be adding, I guess it would look a little different in Claro, but we'd be adding a cancel button here. Any questions about the context? Problem it's trying to solve? Just one more way to close it in case. Go ahead.
Just one brief addition. If you go, could you scroll up, please? and go to add file, please. I'm not sure if it's in that out of the box core. Yep, it is. Then it's a problem. Because if you now click on the close button, it closes completely. That's one other level of complexity in regards of the close or cancel button, why it's needed in the context of that modal inside of a modal context. It's sort of unexpected from a user's perspective. You don't have a way to get back to the modal state right before that. Yeah, you have to close, you have to remove, click the remove button, but it's not really intuitive from my perspective.
Okay,
And
I would say that's out of scope for the current issue. So there is a way to do it. And perhaps that particular window should not have the standard close button.
it is out of the scope, but it's important and it has to inform basically the solution for this issue still to a certain degree from my perspective.
Okay.
Maybe it could be a follow-up issue for this one.
Yeah, it's certainly an issue, certainly related. Just when I say it's out of scope, I'm basically suggesting that it should be its own issue, so a follow-up. Okay, so why not add the cancel button? Shall we read through the comments on the issue? Is there, you mentioned that there's a comment from the subsystem maintainer.
Yes, Steve Musgrave also added that on Slack. He said, just for your information, the subsystem maintainer mentioned on the ticket he didn't see the reason as there is an X, so decisions is up to the UX team. I think it's in comment number 5.
All right. This comment, modals can be closed using the X button, as I noticed, and the escape key. I did that too. I don't think we really use cancel buttons for modals. I'm not even sure we need them. This would be a good question to ask the UX team. If we want to add cancel buttons in modals, we might want to add them everywhere, not just for the media library. Go ahead, Ralph.
Just in addition, that's not entirely true. For example, if you go to the views page, within a view, for example, edit a field, and there that modal has a cancel button actually. So in regards of consistency, it's not entirely true.
So if I edit my favorite view, admin content, and add a field.
Or edit a field, yeah, or add, yeah, exactly. Then you have a cancel button. Or an existing field, you could also edit, and then you have also a cancel button.
And I've been looking a lot at the field UI recently, so they're also putting more forms inside modals. So this is beginning to look familiar. Go ahead, Thomas.
I just wanted to note that I agree both with the fact that this is a follow-up. The second level down, when you add an image, is a follow-up issue. But I do kind of agree that I would like to see consistency. And so I think that rather than this specific issue, the question that I'd like us to discuss today is whether or not we feel that there should be consistency in how the modals are operating. And there seems to be at least 2 paradigms. One is if something goes down one level only. So if there was no add file, this goes down only one level. And do you need a cancel button if you're only going down one level versus something that may have multiple layers beneath it, like the views instance or the media? So to me, that's how I would split the question. Is like, I don't think you need cancel if something only goes one deep, because the X is identical to cancel. But when you do have the possibility to go down multiple layers, cancel gives you a consistent UI all the way through that interface. And so that's just the point I'd like to make.
Okay, so you're arguing for consistency and for reasonable behavior, depending on whether we have this nested modals or modals on modals. Generally try to avoid modals and modals, right?
I think yes, but I think that it would be reasonable in any instance where you have multiple levels that we behave identically throughout the interface. And so from my perspective, it's just making it a consistent rule. If it only goes one deep, there's no need for cancel. If it goes modals and modals, at least two layers or two levels or more, then you use cancel at all levels, because you're developing a consistent pattern so that people understand canceling gets them in and out of that UI.
Aaron, go ahead.
Thanks. And yeah, sorry I was a little bit late. It's been a busy week and a busy day. So I've been kind of out of the loop the last couple of days. Emma also sends her apologies. But yeah, I think it's, generally speaking, it's good to have the cancel button. Like, I think, for instance, the X is in the top corner. It's probably easy to miss. I think a lot of other, if we look across, modals in other systems, operating systems, other applications, there tends to be like a cancel button, even if there's like a close button in the top right, tend to have like a cancel button in the bottom. What I would say at the moment is I agree that if there is an existing pattern that does it in a particular way, we should follow that pattern. I think this is something that our user interface standards will definitely need to have an opinion on, and that opinion must be backed up by research, as they all should be. So for now, I wouldn't want to make like a too strong of a recommendation until we actually have the research to back it up. But generally, I think the pattern that we tend to see and that people would expect is a cancel button, even if there is that X. So that's what I would sort of suggest.
Okay, so more research towards adding the cancel button. Is that fair?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Ralph?
Just one brief addition in regards of Thomas's point. In case it's more than one step, then adding a cancel button, but couldn't it be broken down basically and tackled not only going backwards, but also going forward? Basically introducing something like, oops, I post the link in the chat, the multi-form wizard. That way you would tackle for one, the action buttons at the bottom, as well as the title for the modal as well, where you also communicate it's, for example, step 1, step 2, step 3, or it's adding something to the previous modal or something like that. All those scenarios could be tackled in the context of that form wizard, basically, from my perspective.
Okay, so just for the sake of the recording, the issue that Ralph mentioned is 1886616, multi-step form wizard. This is something that I think exists in C tools. So I imagine the implementation being suggested here is based on that. And yes, that would give us a way to encourage consistency if we had a common way of implementing these multi-step forms.
And obviously, the approach that issue should take would then depend on what the UI standards say should be done.
Right. Another point I want to make is, let's see if this works the way I expect it will. If I right click on this and open in a new tab, I can get that form outside of the modal. And if I'm not using JavaScript, then clicking on that button link, I guess it's actually a link, will do the same thing. It'll do a page load and give me the page without using modals. And I know that Drupal used to have a policy of progressive enhancement, that everything in the admin UI should be usable without JavaScript, but easier to use with JavaScript enabled. And I'm not sure whether we still have that policy. Have we abandoned it? With the media library, can you do all of these operations without using JavaScript? If I right click here, whoa. Even if I right click here, it seems to open the modal. I don't think you can see it because I still get the contextual menu, but opening in a new tab is not one of the options.
Maybe
So-
maybe that's a button and not like a link, like an actual button. Maybe it's something to do with it.
I think so. So certainly many of our existing forms, like the one I looked at in views, do follow that pattern of progressive enhancement, that they can be used without JavaScript. And when you use it without JavaScript, it's important to have that cancel button, because there's no modal form to dismiss. And so I'm in favor of including cancel buttons consistently in every form, whether it shows up in the modal or not. So, remember the people who aren't using JavaScript. Now, going back to the media library, even though it seems to work only in the modal, maybe it would be different if I actually disabled JavaScript for my browser. I'm not sure. But keep in mind that people who aren't using JavaScript, who won't have the escape button and the little X in the upper right corner of the modal, because they won't have a modal, and for their sake, include the cancel button. So I see Ralph post a comment, good point. I'm getting a thumbs up from Thomas, and a thumbs up from Simo. Okay, so I think we have consensus that we should develop a UI standard about this. But in the context of the current issue, I think we have some consensus that adding the cancel button is a good idea.
Yeah, and just to note, like there's Ralph and I have been looking at kind of some initial work around our current UI standards, and the hope is that we can start to evolve and expand and kind of update them. So we could probably mention it as part of the comment, but like we don't need to make it as a direct follow-up, I think, because it's something that we're kind of doing separately anyway.
Right, and we certainly don't want to block this issue on this research project that might take a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely
Okay.
not.
Okay, so go ahead. So does anyone want to volunteer to post the comment? Or go ahead, Aaron.
Well, sorry, I was just gonna say that like, no, I don't remember what I was gonna say. Never mind. Mustn't have been important.
Okay, I think I can post a comment on this one. And before I go on to something else, sometime soon, I think we're going to talk about the documentation pages we have for user interface standards. And Aaron and Ralph started a discussion a few weeks ago on Slack. And once we have some sort of outline to look at, we want to talk about rearranging them, adding to them, finding some standard references so that we can't do our own research on everything. Let's try to identify some good references for industry standards. But also next week, the usability meeting will focus on issues from the Claro theme, because a week from today, the 15th, is already scheduled as a day to contribute to Claro. And maybe I can scroll up and find the link where that was mentioned. And just as a reminder to myself, I'm going to have to schedule another 20 Zoom meetings. I don't see where it is.
I've already posted a link to that Slack chat.
I'm getting the inconvenient user interface for following Slack links. If you could find the link to the actual page announcing.
I've posted it in the chat. The direct link to the thread.
To the thread, but not
Oh,
to...
you mean 1 second? Yeah, I copy the direct link to the issue Christina posted as well.
I suppose. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Claro Contribution Day on December 15th, 2023. So a week from today, we'll be discussing Claro issues, and sometime in the future, we'll talk about reorganizing our user interface standards documentation. Let me also, let's see, structure. Let me go to content and blocks and add a content block. And I just noticed that earlier today, ta-da, we now have 2 submit buttons, a save button, which will go back to the block library where I just was, and a save and configure, which will let me position the block, go to the block layout page. So save and configure used to be the only option. And someone is commenting in Slack that went in today, yes, and it was cherry picked for 10.2, really. I'm a little surprised that with the RC already released that this change is going in. So this used to be the only option. You'd go to the configure block page where you could say which pages, which roles, which region to put it in. But now the primary action is to go back to this page, the list of content blocks, which I still call the custom block library. And I guess if I just do a quick test, edit, Oh. The add form and the edit form are different. The only option is to go back here.
Yeah, maybe that's a good follow-up issue because like I could see you wanting to place the block from place an existing block. It is interesting. I remember we did talk about that issue, I believe, but it's interesting. I don't remember what our exact collective recommendation was, but it's interesting that it did end up with save and configure because like I would have thought that like save in place would have been a better name for the button, given that's what you ultimately end up like doing.
I was thinking that too, and I know that you've been following this issue, and I assume that had been discussed. I
I have
don't
a
really
vague memory
like.
of us discussing it at a meeting, but that's why I don't remember like what our recommendation was. And yeah.
Ralph, go ahead.
The recommendation back then in the consensus was save and configure, as far as I remember. And there is one to be written follow-up issue about adding the ability to add a second select field aside the select field for picking the region. Also that you're able to change the actual theme you're placing or configuring the block for. That is one follow-up issue, and another one that is, I think, already RTCB. At the moment, if you are on the block layout page and place a block right now, in, for example, the block region pre-header, then it's already went in, because before that region was empty or had to be configured. Nice. And that is already in. Cool.
Really? Yes. This is a recent change that when I go to a particular region and place block from there.
Yeah, before that it was just select as the default, and you had to select it manually, and in case you have a short working memory, then you were at a loss.
Okay, so since we've talked about it, this is the issue that just went in today that we've been discussing. Revisit the redirect to add block form in the add block content form. And for the sake of the recording, the issue number is 3325167. Let me just search the page for the word configure. It's in the proposed resolution. And when Aaron gave the usability review, we actually did consider save in place and decided instead to recommend save and configure based on the title of the form where we're going.
Yeah, maybe we should have taken a more like holistic look and said, well, actually, should that form that you're going to be changed from configure to place? Because the button on the list, I realized also the button on the list where you choose blocks on the region page, like has the button text there is place block. So I'm like, kind of regret that we came to that recommendation. Oh well.
Yeah, place
I
block.
think this is something again where like, let's say we have a UI standard that says something to the effect of, okay, like the forms and button text should be consistent. Like if you click a button that says one thing, you should go to a form that says the same thing. So like that, I think could then spur the thing of, oh, this button says place. The form should probably also say place. And then like, oh, hey, this button says save and configure. Well, we should change it to save and place then. So I would probably go that direction rather than try to indirectly contradict a previous recommendation rather than us directly contradicting it, I think is maybe a more tactful way of doing it. But it's only if everybody agrees that we should contradict what we previously recommended.
So let's see. It seems to depend on whether you're adding a new block or an existing one. So if I want to add a block, I click place block. The form says place block at the top. All of these operations say place block, and then I hit configure block. Whereas, or I guess maybe I should have actually done that. Save it. And now that it's there, I have the link saying configure. Oh, and if this doesn't open in modal, although it's the same form, no longer in the modal. And now I clicked a button that said configure and it went to configure block. So that's a difference between adding a new one and editing an existing one. Go ahead, Ralph.
But just one addition. If you would be able only to select into which region block is placed, then place a block would be okay. But I think one of the reasoning behind save and configure in the concept of adding creating or adding a block was also you're also able to change and set the visibility settings, and that way it isn't only about placing a block, but it's basically configuring it. But on the other hand, I agree in regards of Aaron's recommendation and suggestion, but it's also in regards of consistency problematic on the block layout page, because there having a place block button makes sort of sense, because configure without having an actual button. Instead, the other option might be just add a button or something like that, but still the page itself, it's not only about placing a button, but also the visibility setting and configuring them. So it's not that straightforward in that regard, from my perspective.
So I would say that visibility settings are also about placing a block on which page, as opposed to the region, which says where on the page.
Oh.
Yeah, because you could have two blocks placed, and you can independently set the visibility settings for each instance of the block, let's say. So you could have two the same custom block in the header and in the footer, and for one in the header, you could say only show this to logged in users. And you could have the exact same block placed in the footer and say show this to everyone. So even the visibility settings, and this is just I suppose in a way that's like an indirect side effect of how our configuration system works. I don't know if it was intentional, but it's a nice to have thing that we have. So I think it's I would agree with Benji. It still kind of relates to placing. I think that the thing we can look at with this is what do we do in other places? Like we have the concept of adding and editing. So if you add a media item or a node, the form talks about adding, whereas if you're making changes, the form talks about editing. And I think we were trying to as far as possible not use the word configure. Or maybe we were trying to not use the word settings. I forget, but I think placing is a good term for when you're adding it. So in the context of the custom block side of things, the button on the custom block form, I think having it as save in place always makes sense, because you're never editing an existing instance. Whereas when the configure link or the configure button, maybe that should be called edit, because that's what we use more consistently. And then the form, we then say, your edit name of instance, whatever it is. And then that would also be consistent with node and media and whatever else.
Yeah, I also think there's no way, I don't see any way from this page to edit the custom block. Oh, what I also wanted to point out that although most of the form is devoted to visibility and region, which, as I said, could be considered place, there's also the display title checkbox, there's the actual title, and then it doesn't come up for content blocks, but let's find something from views. There can be other configuration, like the number of items per block, whether to override the title. So the configuration form is not all about placement, although it's largely about placement. Aaron, go ahead.
I think that's an old hand.
Oh, okay. And I guess maybe if you'll indulge me for a minute. We've talked about some of the recent changes to the field system, or the field UI. And at the moment, if I have an existing field like tags on the article content type that I want to also add to the page content type, I click on reuse an existing field and I get this modal. And where is tags? I guess here we go. I can reuse that. But anyway, the point is it comes up in a modal window and then sends me back to this configuration page, which is not in a modal. Whereas if I click on create a new field, it does not open in a modal. It gives me this form that we've been we've already discussed at length, and how on a large screen like I currently have, you see these options come up at the bottom of the page. But if you have more options in this grid or a smaller screen, you might click on that and not see any effect, which is a serious problem. But I just recently noticed the inconsistency that one of these two buttons opens in a modal and the other doesn't, which I really don't like. All right, let's go back to the issue for the meeting. We have almost 20 minutes left. Are there any of these issues that look like we could productively talk about them for 15 minutes? How about this one? Since I'm not hearing any other suggestions near the bottom of the list. It's issue 3262935. Link field validation constraints don't give enough detail. And what do we have? Oh, there are already 40 comments on it, so it's obviously not too simple. Is it tagged for usability review? No.
No.
So 3 of the validation constraints for link fields give the error message, the path URI is invalid. Link not existing internal constraint validator catches 3 different kinds of exception, which all produce this message. Link type constraint validator handles 2 different errors. Link is internal, but only external is allowed, or vice versa, but only shows this message for both. That makes it difficult to figure out what is wrong with the field value. steps to reproduce would be nice. But I think we can probably get an idea of what's going on here. Let's see, does the article content type have any links? No, it doesn't, but we can add a new one. And do here. And there are a lot of options when adding a link field. You can say only internal links, only external links, or about either one. Let's try external links. And save settings. And then let me edit an article, Aaron. Oh no, I'm sorry, I still have this little Zoom notification that you raised your hand 10 minutes ago. Yeah, an article page. And so if I try to put an internal page like node add text content and try to save, I configured it to show only external links, so I should get the error message, please enter a URL. So I got this validation. All right, so let me enter ftp://example.com. Will I get the same message? Interesting. It went ahead and saved it. That's not what I was expecting. So I'm not sure how to trigger these errors that this is talking about. As I said, steps to reproduce on the issue would be helpful. Thomas?
Are we allowed to send it back and just make that request? Please provide steps to reproduce.
Yes, we could. What is the current status? It's already needs work. So we wouldn't be changing the status back to needs work. It's already there. We could certainly post a comment and add the issue tag that it needs an issue summary update.
Yeah, and actually, we have quite a number of issues in the queue that are sitting as needs work. Maybe it's not a bad idea to just go through and see, for the ones that needs work, is there any, are they, can we just say, if it's not ready to review, can we just say on it, hey, this needs an update, needs screenshots, then put it to needs review? That might shorten our queue significantly.
Issues go back and forth between needs work and needs review. So you're not suggesting that we wholesale remove the usability tag from anything that needs work, are you?
No, not remove the tag. I'm just saying, like, the queue that we have in our issue summaries for our meetings, that like queue, like that list of issues.
Oh,
quite a number of those have been sitting at needs work for some time, I believe. So it's like, if they're just if they're not ready to review, like, maybe we should just take them off the list,
Sure. So just take them off this list, not remove the tag.
Oh
that
yeah,
the
not
NC
remove the tag
usability.
because
Okay.
it's important to keep the tag, but like
Just-
yeah, we could just say if there's, say, some of those are like, okay, well, there's nothing for us to review yet, or like it's clearly needs some work, we could just say as Thomas said, hey, can we get some screenshots? And then, and then when it's ready, it can be put back to needs review again.
Sure, that's probably a good idea to do. Go ahead, Thomas.
I didn't actually share my motivation for it. My motivation is I'd hate for us to spend a lot of time on something based upon our own assumptions when our assumptions were wrong. So I tend to want to have all the boxes checked so that we avoid wasting our time and their time.
Yeah, and in fact, we go back to that issue, and I have to be careful not to save this comment. I just want to, paste it in. I have this standard comment, and I should probably save it somewhere where other people can use it too, and perhaps improve on it. So preview, not save. And we could use something like this for the job that Aaron suggested. When you tag an issue for usability review, please make it easy for the usability team to review the issue, update the issue summary. And oh yeah, this is a problem with previews on Drupal.org. This is actually a bulleted list or maybe a numbered list, but that doesn't show up. Proposed resolution section should describe all the changes made in the issue. The user interface changes should show the existing UI and the proposed UI. Most of the time, I prefer to have plain text in the proposed resolution section and screenshots in the user interfaces section. You can also attend the weekly usability meeting to present an issue. I am adding the tag for an issue summary update and setting the status to needs work. So, something like that comment, I think, is what you have in mind, right, Aaron?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it does make me think, like, should we only know of one tag that I'm aware of for like usability review, but like it wouldn't hurt to have a tag that's like, like the needs review queue tag that's being used, like something like usability review queue or something that can easily be added and removed from issues as and when the review is needed. And that way, rather than us like tracking a list in issue summaries, maybe that's a slightly better way to do it, because then we can just filter by, when we're looking at issues to bring up at a meeting, we can just say, okay, let's filter by that tag for things that are needs review. And then, that might be an interesting idea. That said, there's probably like other things we could change about the process, and I feel like I'm about to open like a can of worms here. So maybe we should shut that can for now while we're, 5 minutes before the end of the meeting.
Well, we do have this link in the issue
Right.
summary for our issues that shows the queue. It includes both RTBC and needs review issues. It's not just Drupal core. And if we're ever looking for
Not a big
issues,
list, actually. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like, because we want to have a tag that says this, this is being flagged as a needs usability review, and that tag like this can stay there regardless of the status. But I feel like then we need that like extra tag that's like that definitively that's added at the point where it's like, okay, this is now ready for the attention of the group. Like it has screenshots, it has a summary update, it's ready, it's in a state where the group's ready. And if we add it, if it's added by somebody and we don't think it's ready, we can just remove the tag, send it back. And then that way, like, because issues that have this tag, even if we filter by needs review, they might go needs review because like there's a patch and it goes back to needs work, but it might not actually be ready for us to review, if that makes sense.
well, I don't think we need a new tag for that. We can use the one we've been using, and we have to do the work of adding that comment we were discussing to the issues that have requested a usability review but don't
Right.
Haven't made it easy for us.
How about issues that kind of, I'm thinking there is no like it needs usability advice. So that could be something that people, or maybe like tag when there is usability issues and the direction of work is not clear.
Huh.
Like, isn't that kind of what the? I guess that's kind of what the current tag does also, though. But that's what I'm saying. Maybe what I'm saying is like a tag that's like queued for like meeting review or something that indicates that, okay, this issue is now in a position where it can be brought up at a meeting. Because if you take this list as an example, like these issues, like maybe they can be brought up in a meeting. Maybe we go through and we say, oh, actually, like you said, needs screenshots or whatever. We put it back to needs work. But maybe there's like other things that also need to be fixed. So like somebody puts it back to needs review, but it shows up on this list again. But we might then go in and say, oh, actually, it still needs screenshots again. But we don't want to take out the usability review tag because like that might have been added further up, and maybe we still want this list to be able to see issues that are like that might be that have an impact on usability. Maybe it's just that, like, I don't know, maybe like as Simo said, maybe it's like maybe we need a broader tag for issues that just need like input, and maybe the review tag is like more defined. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of like brainstorming right now.
Go ahead, Thomas.
I'm not sure how I want to express this, but I would like us. I didn't realize that other view was there, and looking back to see things that haven't been commented on in over 4 years, or an issue related to 7, for instance. I feel like procedurally it would be nice to make this more usable, because this is more easily visible to the community. And if we made this part of our workflow for how we're working on things, and we can move things into this list, but however this is set up, doing it in a way that makes it manageable and getting things on and off this list might help us be more effective in addressing the most urgent things, rather than only. I'm not saying we should exclude things that people are really interested in, but I feel like a lot of times it's whatever catches someone's eye is what we talk about in these meetings, rather than necessarily things that may relate to Drupal core, like the add cancel, but like picking the things that we really want, we feel we need to get through. And I hate the idea that we have in a backlog things that haven't been looked at or touched in 4 years. I'm very surprised. I did not know there were things that were this old on here.
Oh. Drupal issues sometimes go forever. And part of the problem is that no one really wants to close an issue as won't fix, because, well, maybe someone wants to work on it. Yeah, it is a problem that there are lots of issues that have been sitting around for a long time. We're almost at the end of the hour. Remember, in the issue tags field, there's this link to the issue tag guidelines. And where is the list? Here we go. Follow this list. And so we have an official definition of what it means. I should just search the page instead of scrolling, but here we go. Needs usability review. This is badly formatted. So this is actually a table. Used to alert the usability topic maintainers that an issue significantly affects or has the potential to affect the usability of Drupal, and their sign off is needed. When adding this tag, make it easy to review the issue. Oh, this is based on the text that I just used. Make sure the issue summary describes the problem and the proposed solutions. Screenshots usually help a lot. To get sign off on issues with this tag, post about them in the UX channel and/or attend a UX meeting to demo the patch. If an issue represents a significant new feature, UI change, or change to the general user experience of Drupal, use needs product manager review instead. So that's the current description. Ralph in the Slack posted a link to the oldest usability issue, or the oldest issue with that tag, which has been waiting for 5 years. And Thomas, go ahead.
Just very briefly, I think that I'm seeing what Aaron was mentioning, that there are two use cases. Sometimes people just want comments from us rather than a full review. And needs usability review sounds like the queue of work that people are where we are a blocker, versus someone just saying, hey, can you give us a comment or something? And I can see how those are two different tags or two different requests for us. I'm a tiny bit worried about how buried this list was in terms of how most people working with issues, like it took you a bit and you knew this existed. I'm concerned that people don't know this exists and they're just using a very small subset of tags because of the complexity. And I don't know how to address that, but that is a concern with anything that we're talking about.
Okay. and
Maybe we could talk about that usability group meeting.
Okay, we're already a minute over time. Ralph mentions in the chat, he suggests as a name for the second tag, needs UX input. But let's wrap the discussion here. And I guess my feeling is that the way to manage the queue is for interested people, which includes us, to take the trouble to look at an issue, see what needs usability about it, and then bring it up at the meeting. So it takes some time in preparation for the meeting to make that happen. Again, next week we'll be looking at Claro issues, and I'm hoping that Christina or someone else will be preparing some issues for us to look at. So I'll see you then, I hope, and thanks for coming today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Benji. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, and a nice weekend.
Have a nice weekend. Bye.